Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe button. And for all my continued followers, I want to say thank you. And this is an opinion-based video channel where I try to open your eyes and ears up to some of the travails and tribulations that take place throughout our cities, our states, our country, and sometimes around the world. And I got a story for you right out of St. Louis that is heavy on my heart. My father is from the Ville, went to Sumner High School, and we got to talk about the dilapidation of North St. Louis City. Of course, we had Black Flight starting in the 80s, definitely in the 90s, of many black middle-class folks moving to North County. Then you had White Flight, where white folks left North County and moved to St. Charles County. Built those two areas up. So you had a suburban move. But for many of us who have been in St. Louis or who have grown up in St. Louis, many of our parents grew up on the north side. Back in the 70s, the 60s and the 70s, St. Louis was a very strong and vibrant city as far as population, well over 500,000 people. And now the numbers are dismal in today's time. We've had a situation where we had our first black mayor in Freeman Bosley, and now we have our first black female mayor in Tashara Jones. But as you drive around North City, you see one dilapidated house, building, middle school, high school after another. Two of your most profound schools west of the Mississippi, high schools, are Vashon High School and Sumner High School. My dad went to Sumner, and now, of course, Sumner went from a few thousand students in full capacity to now they barely have a few hundred, and there's been recent history of them even talking about closing Sumner. Vashon, of course, built a new school on Cass, and but many of the middle schools, Carver Middle School, many of the middle schools that were the filtering for these high schools like Vashon, Beaumont, Sumner, are abandoned buildings with broken glass everywhere. I mean, you can even drive in the Ville, the JVL, and there are entire blocks where 14, 15 houses are boarded up, abandoned, no one's living in them, and it is a very dismal scenario in North City. So, why am I saying all that? Well, we have this new $10 billion NGA situation that's taking place right at Cass and Jefferson, this geospace government-backed organization that's going to be built. And secretly, there's probably going to be regentrification. And those areas near Jefferson and Cass are going to be redeveloped. Of course, our government is not going to spend $5 and $10 billion on government-backed companies and have the surrounding area to look like it's dying. So yes, there's going to be regentrification. You're going to see those areas are going to change drastically. There's even controversy that Vashon may be at risk, and that entire school may be different. So why is it that North St. Louis City has so many abandoned buildings and it is on its last pulse of life? Well, you have these organizations that are secretly or quietly trying to do this regentrification and redevelopment. And one of them is called the St. Louis Development Corporation, where they are passing out grants for redevelopment in North City. And of course, many people and companies are trying to position themselves to get this funding. There's all kinds of funding coming out of City Hall for redevelopment, especially in real estate. You see development going on all over St. Louis City and St. Louis County. And many times you're talking about tax credits, you're talking about TIFs, you're talking about grants. Many of these companies are not using their own money, or they're using some of it, but they're also getting city, state, and federal funds for these development projects. And in this situation, I want to talk about in this article about the St. Louis Development Corporation, if you haven't heard of them, and how they were not properly vetting some of these companies that they were giving grant money to for the redevelopment of the city. And it makes you wonder, are they doing it under the auspices of good work, or are they dropping the ball? So let's go. St. Louis reevaluating grants. Dozens in Northside programs have seen status updates recently. City development officials under pressure to fix problems with a troubled Northside grant program have been reevaluating dozens of awards worth millions of dollars. City records that track changes in the program show several awards that were listed as viable 4 months ago are now tagged non-viable or to be determined. And some organizations previously listed as good destinations for the cash are now listed as ineligible for all but the smallest grants. The St. Louis Development Corporation previously announced the cancellation of $1.7 million in grants to a handful of organizations. Look at these amounts. But records suggest as much as $2 million more, set to go to more than 40 firms, could be in limbo. Dion Braxton, and a St. Louis Development Corporation spokesperson, said the determination in the data largely speak for themselves and declined to comment on pending awards. The St. Louis Development Corporation officials have long maintained that they are vetting every organization and will get through them all. The changes mark the latest twist for a high-profile program intended to help reverse decades of disinvestment and neglect in the city's north side, a top priority for Mayor Tashara Jones. Officials have said the $37 million initiative will help hundreds of businesses and nonprofits restore vibrancy to a forgotten corridor and offer opportunities to people left out for decades. This is talking about North City. It is blighted and it is depressing. But since the St. Louis Development Corporation officials announced their picks this summer, they have encountered increasing concerns. Post-Dispatch reporters found one announced winner working out of offices in Shrewsbury, not even in the city. Others listed addresses in empty buildings and vacant lots. Dozens owed the city delinquent real estate taxes despite a stated requirement that they be current. St. Louis Development Corporation officials conceded mistakes in the vetting process, largely blaming a third-party contractor or vendor, and promised to double-check each grant before cutting any more checks. Still, City Comptroller Darlene Green called for an immediate do-over of the program. U.S. Senator Eric Schmidt referred the matter to the Treasury Department. This is how serious this is. Late last month, St. Louis Development Corporation got a letter from the state auditor's office seeking information on the program as part of a preliminary investigation. And on Monday, the Post-Dispatch published the results of an investigation into a sample of 84 of the 444 entities in line for money, 84 of them, even after subtracting those whose grants had been rescinded. Reporters found 44 questionable firms still in line for the money, including 27 that appeared not to be operating or were barely operating, 9 that were operating but not operating out of North St. Louis locations, at least 8 others that couldn't deliver on proposed projects because they don't have enough money. But the changes in the St. Louis Development Corporation records call out dozens of more grants now in question. And they suggest SLDC could soon reduce the overall number of troublesome grants. It goes on to say the changes are visible in the St. Louis Development Corporation data released as part of the transparency effort launched after initial reports questioned the program. The data lists the names of each announced grant winner as well as other information, including a business viability status, reflecting whether or not a winner can meet the requirements of the program. When the data was first released in October, officials had tagged 200 as vetted and viable and 38 as to be determined, leaving about 200 blank. But as of last month, the data listed 274 as vetted viable, but more than 30 as non-viable, and 120 to be determined. 10 had been removed from the vetted viable to non-viable, and 15 had been moved to be determined. Most of the grants newly tagged as questionable, however, were still slated, at least as of January 16th, to get grants. When you require computer services, an IT firm headquartered in Shrewsbury, for instance, was in line for $50,000, and Luckett's Lounge, a bar that burned down a few years ago, was listed to receive $12,500. Now, the company in Shrewsbury, the IT place, is not even in North St. Louis, and they're slated to get $50,000. The vetting process with St. Louis Development Corporation has failed. 10 others had been reclassified and made eligible only for 2,500 capacity building grants, which is the smallest available. One of those 10 was the St. Louis, Mississippi River Museum, which was supposed to get 25,000. It advertises itself as a full museum with more than a dozen exhibits on a street just north of the Central West End. But its address leads to a 4-family structure where no one answers the door, even during advertised business hours. Braxton, the St. Louis Development Corporation spokesperson, said many grants newly classified as to be determined were initially vetted by a third-party vendor, Grow America, which officials say made mistakes requiring a second view. So what does this story tell you? Well, you can truly believe that from City Hall to the state government officials, there is going to be redevelopment in North St. Louis. As I said, with the new NGA, National Geospace company that's right there at Cass and Jefferson, that's slated to be fully going in the next few years. There is going to be regentrification in the Ville, in the JVL. They're not going to spend billions of dollars and have the surrounding area to be dilapidated. They're already starting to tear down O'Fallon Place downtown, and there is going to be a change. But you have these quiet organizations that are kind of in control, the gatekeepers of the grant money, and they're not doing a proper job in vetting these companies for the redevelopment of North St. Louis, as you can see. Some of these companies have gotten grant money and they're a ghost company. Some people have gotten grant money and they're in Shrewsbury or in the suburbs. So the St. Louis Development Corporation needs to take a real look in the mirror and not blame a third vendor. And we need to do a better job at making sure that we get the redevelopment of North City to where it used to be back in the 70s. Tell me what you think about this story. It's been the Trevor Donald Experience.